Hello everyone, Tony Walsh here and welcome back to Walsh Farms. In this Memorial Day video, I'm going to talk about a relative of Jackie's, and his name is Private Bennett H. Waters. We refer to him as Uncle Hubert, and Uncle Hubert became a prisoner of war after being captured in the Battle of Luzon in 1942. So one thing I have here, let me get my papers out. One thing I have here is an article, or a copy of an article from the Blackshear Times, which is our local newspaper. And it was written by the late Reverend Clyde Thomas. And in it, Reverend Thomas writes that after the war and upon returning home, and I'm quoting his words, after the war and upon returning home, that he and other residents of Pierce County were marching in a local parade, and says, quote, "I believe many of those people did not know what was going on. The little children were waving their flags as though they were at an athletic event," unquote. So, before moving forward, I want to take a moment and teach the difference between Memorial Day, Veterans Day, and Armed Services Day, because those are three different days. Memorial Day is for those who died while wearing the uniform, while serving our country, and it's celebrated on the last Monday in May. Veterans Day is celebrated on November 11th, and that is for those that have served and hung up the uniform. And then Armed Services Day is for those that are currently serving and is celebrated on the third Saturday in May. So it's three different days, three distinct meanings for three different groups of people, but a lot of people get those confused. And a lot of us due to patriotism and wanting to honor our military. But let's honor them in the right context and in the right day. Memorial Day, Veterans Day, Armed Services Day. But today's Memorial Day, so let's get back to Uncle Hubert. So, another thing I have here is a copy of a letter that was written to Grandma Kelly, which is Jackie's great-grandmother, because Uncle Hubert died in the war. He died as a prisoner of war. So this letter is a little bit long, so I'm going to read it quick, but it really tells the context of not just Uncle Hubert's story, the story in our family, but it tells the story of a lot of those military men, young men, that died during World War II. The letter is written from Lawrence Harrington, and he says, it is dated May 17th, 1954. It says, "Dear Mrs. Kelly, in compliance with the request of my buddy Maynard Higgs, I am indeed happy to furnish the information concerning your son, Hubert Waters. I first met Hubert in 1941 when he became a member of my squadron, the 17th Bombardment Squadron in Savannah Air Base, Savannah, Georgia. I can truthfully say we became very good friends from the start. I can recall Hubert was a very friendly and considerate lad. He was without a doubt one of the best liked boys in the squadron." He then goes on and says they left San Francisco for the Philippines on November 20th, 1941, and that they were quartered at Fort McKinley, 3 miles from the Manila, Philippines, and they had managed to see some of the sights of Manila before the declaration of war. In less than 3 weeks after our arrival in the Philippines, Pearl Harbor was attacked by the Japanese. He then says on December 24th, 1941, the entire squadron crossed Manila Bay and landed on Bataan. It says early Christmas morning that several of them began marching to a designated place yet unknown to them. After walking 4 hours, they decided to rest underneath the shade of small group trees, and while resting, a chaplain stopped long enough to give us a large helping of rock candy. He also says he had a large can of salmon in his possession, and he remembers laughing at the small miserable meal and remarked, "I swear I won't have to eat junk like this next Christmas." There was more truth in that statement than I realized. For the years to come, we would have been contented to receive only the juice of the salmon, but fortunately we were quite young and ready for anything, so they did not mind their predicament of the time. Says the next day we made camp at a point in the mountains. I do not remember how long we remained here, but I do recall that we suffered our first loss of human life, a Private Robinson killed by a Japanese bomb. Later we moved to a located position as ordered by our group commander, being somewhat closer to the front lines. I was ordered away from my squadron to the Bataan airport. I had in my possession all the squadron's records. These records included Hubert's service. It was sometime in February 1942 before I received news of the squadron. I was pleased to learn that no one was injured as of yet. He says, I did not see Hubert until the day of surrender, April 9th, 1942. I remember more than a dozen guys from the squadron that we had met again. It was not until the third day of March that I again had the pleasure of reuniting with Hubert. Somehow I know that whenever the old gang would meet, it gave us necessary strength to endure the many hard miles before us. On April 15, 1942, the death march came to an end. We had finally arrived at our destination, Camp O'Donnell. This camp was by far the worst camp any prisoner of war was ever forced to call his home. After we rested a bit, it was only natural that we would scout the camp to learn who had or had not made the march. I was indeed happy to find Hubert in fairly good shape. We remained in this camp for approximately 3 months. I was then transferred to the hospital side of our new camp, Camp Cabana Tuan. This camp was much better than Camp O'Donnell. Hubert was fortunate in maintaining his health to such a degree that prevented him from being a patient in this poorly equipped hospital. The food in the hospital was only half as much as that on my duty side. I am sure Hubert was never a patient in the hospital. I did learn that he made many outside details that enabled him to get extra chow from the natives of the islands. It says on November 24th, 1944, I was transferred to Bilibad Prison, Manila, Philippines. I cannot express in words how happy I was to see Hubert in such a healthy condition. In fact, I inquired as to how he managed to gain weight since the last I had seen him. He answered, I'll tell you, but make sure no one hears my secret. Hubert continued, the Japs have seen fit to give me the job of feeding their dirty, honorable pigs. So the writer says, I see the Japs feed you extra chow for this work, and Hubert laughed. He said, you sap, you know the Japs better than that. He said, I clean their mess hall and all the leftovers goes to Hubert instead of the pigs. He said Hubert informed him that after roll call that I was to meet him behind the main building. He said when Hubert arrived, he had 2-gallon containers filled with brim of good delicious food and was intended for the honorable pigs. But they had a good feast. He said he couldn't make out what the ingredients of the slop was, but the flavor made up the difference. He said he asked Hubert, how in the world do you manage to keep the pigs from losing weight? He said he laughed. He said, see this, and he held up a sack of what looked like sawdust. He said, but this is the coconut meat that the Japs have removed from the juice to make gasoline for their trucks. He said, I feed this to the pigs, which makes them thirsty, so then he gives them plenty of water. Therefore, they don't lose any weight. Hubert was an old country boy with knowledge. He says, I remained in the Bilibad prison for a month, and on December 1st, 1944, Hubert himself and approximately 1,600 other prisoners were forced to walk through the city of Manila. This was to be the march of humiliation, but the natives risked their lives by giving them water in small bottles. Many of the Japanese were running in all directions, hitting the natives with their swords, trying to prevent them from helping us. But the natives managed to throw us small Bibles and give them water along the way. And the women were giving them blessings. It says on December 4th, 1944, that they were bombed by American planes. Oh, they're missing a piece here. Okay, so there's a section missing out of here. So they were being transferred from the prison camp, presumably back to Japan. So it says on December 4th, 1944, they were bombed by American planes. They were not aware of the fact that Americans were on board the Japanese ship. It says, we lost only a few men in this raid. Hubert nor myself received a scratch, and that was in Subic Bay. It says they then remained enclosed in a tennis court for 9 days. Then on December 14th, 1944, we boarded another ship, and they were in the hold of the ship about 20 feet below the waterline. He said it was unbearable, and he was certain something was going to happen. He said in a short time, another wave of American planes attacked the ship, and only one bomb was dropped on the ship, and it landed directly overhead my hold. According to history, this bomb caused more deaths than any other bomb on any group of prisoners in World War II. In my hold of the ship, 465 prisoners were killed out of the 500. Only 35 remained alive after the raid, and Hubert was killed instantly. Please believe that he suffered no pains. All of the dead were taken to the shores of Formosa, where they were cremated. Father Cummings, our ship chaplain, requested that the dead would receive a Christian burial. After the Japs returned, they informed him that his wishes had been complied with. Father Cummings, although he was against cremation, said, I am happy to know that my boys will not be exposed to the elements of time and that their bodies will not be covered by the millions of flies as they were back in the Philippines. He closes by saying, Mrs. Kelly, you have indeed a wonderful son, one that the remaining squadron will always remember. It was indeed unfortunate that he was taken from you, but it was God's wish. I am sure he is enjoying the glory of God because Hubert Waters made the supreme sacrifice in giving this one and only life here on earth for his God and his country. No man can give more. Every year on December 14th, I make a special effort to pray for the buddies I lost on that hell ship. You can rest assured that Hubert is always included in the prayers. God bless you, Lawrence Harrington. What a tribute to Uncle Hubert, but not just Uncle Hubert, to many more young men that lost their lives, not just that day, but during that war. You know, this country, you know, we see the flags on July 4th, see the flags on Memorial Day, see them on Veterans Day, but there's a lot more we need to be doing. It doesn't matter what side of the political aisle you're on. We're all Americans. We need to get back to September 12th. We all remember what happened on 9/11. And on 9/12 we came together. What has happened to our country? But I digress. Another thing that we have, and I forgot to bring it with me, is Grandma Kelly got a citation from the Army, and I'll show a picture of it later. But on that citation, it was presented to Grandma Kelly, as again I said would be Jackie's great-grandmother, and it says, Citation of Honor, United States Army Air Forces. Private Bennett H. Waters, who gave his life in the performance of his duty with the date of December 15, 1944. It says he lived to bear his country's arms. He died to save its honor. He was a soldier, and he knew a soldier's duty. His sacrifice will help to keep aglow the flaming torch that lights our lives, that millions, yet unborn, may know the priceless joy of liberty. And we pay him homage and revere his memorial. In solemn pride, rededicate ourselves to a complete fulfillment of the task for which he so gallantly has placed his life upon the altar of man's freedom. That citation is signed by H.H. Arnold, General of the Army, Commanding General, Army Air Forces.
Okay, here I'm at the Blackshear City Park where all the war monuments are at. You can see the stones with placards with names on it. You can see a cannon right there. Here's a headstone, or not a headstone, just a little monument marker where the Olympic flag came through Blackshear whenever the Olympics were in Georgia. I don't even remember what year that was. Of course, then the sidewalk is just lined with American flags, but let's get up here and take a look to see where Uncle Hubert's name is. Okay, here's the marker, the Pierce County Memorial for World War II boys who gave their lives. And yes, they were young men, not boys, but they were very young men. And you can see right down here in the bottom left is Hubert Bennett Waters. Here we are at the Blackshear City Cemetery, and here is a marker in a slab. There's no body underneath because Uncle Hubert's body was never recovered. But you can see the headstone there. It says December 15th, 1944, you know, is his date of passing. And then here on the slab it says captured on April 9th, 1942 by the Japanese. Killed in Subic Bay, Philippines while being transferred from Luzon, presumably to Japan.
Okay, so that's going to end this Memorial Day video. I hope you enjoyed it, because my plans are to continue this as much as I can. That includes Veterans Day and Armed Services Day. So this will be a whole new series, a whole new playlist, because we need to get back to honoring those who have served this country. Some sacrificially. Well, they've all sacrificed something for service, but some gave their lives. So we want to keep those in our memory. And Uncle Hubert, obviously I never got to meet you, but thank you and the many others that died so that we could have freedom. Y'all take care and God bless.